Welcome to Vitamin OC. I'm Joanna Weiss.
And I'm Whitney Gomez. Every week we bring you your recommended dose of civics and civilization in Orange County. And today we are honored to have a really important guest with us. Kristin Bride, thank you for joining us. I met you through your sister-in-law and my very good friend, Susie Lore, and you have a tragic but very inspiring story to share with us today. So thank you for making time in between lobbying in Washington, D.C. and promoting your documentary in Hollywood. You're a busy person. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Good, Kristen, thank you so much for being here. You're here to talk about something that many parents think about, but don't often feel equipped to handle: our kids' lives online. You've turned your unimaginable personal loss into a national effort to make social media safer for young people. But before we talk about your important advocacy work, can you please tell us about your son Carson and your family's story?
Sure. So my husband and I have two sons. Carson was our youngest. He was 2.5 years younger than his older brother. They were really close. They loved playing Magic the Gathering, the card game together. Carson was our funny guy. He always came up with funny jokes and had an incredible smile and hug. And he had started to get into acting and was really, really good at it. And so we were really conservative parents with technology, and we had waited until Carson was through 8th grade to give him his first cell phone. It was an old hand-me-down iPhone with no apps on it. But when he got to 10th grade, he begged for Snapchat because that was the way the kids were connecting. And so we knew he had Snapchat. He didn't make it to 11th grade. What ended up happening is the school shut down and it was the pandemic, and the only way for the kids to connect was through social media. And he was using social media and Snapchat to connect with friends. And this anonymous app was built into Snapchat so that his classmates could respond anonymously to his posts. And when you look at anonymous apps, over the years, this is a trend. They always lead to cyberbullying because clearly when kids have no accountability and they're young and they're impulsive, they're going to post things that are unkind. And they did. And in many cases over the years, they lead to cyberbullying, a suicide, and then they shut down and another one comes out. And so Carson received in the weeks before his suicide hundreds of negative, harassing, sexually explicit messages from his high school classmates. The last search on his phone before he ended his life while we slept was for hacks to find out who was doing this to him.
Thank you for sharing that. That's really, I think the only way we can describe it is unimaginable. And we're so grateful for you for your advocacy in doing this work.
Thank you.
Kristin, you very generously allowed us to watch the documentary, which reviews Carson's experience and your experience lobbying for legislation to protect other children against having this experience. I think I cried a dozen times when I was watching it. I mean, it's really, our hearts go out to you. And there's a reenactment of the morning of Carson's death in the documentary that's just beyond heart-wrenching. And I don't want to ask you to go back to that horrible day, but can you walk us through how you were able to discover that social media played a role in Carson's death?
Sure. We were shocked. The night before, he actually wrote his upcoming work schedule on our kitchen calendar. We had a great night. This was just came out of nowhere, and we needed to find out why he did this. He wrote us a suicide note saying how much he loved us, but he didn't feel like he was going to be successful in life. And so in the upcoming weeks, we started to hear through this school community that he was cyberbullied over YOLO. Stands for You Only Live Once. And that's the anonymous app that was used. And I was like, what is YOLO? I know he has Snapchat, but I've never heard of YOLO. And so that's when we started digging into his phone, and we saw that he had taken screenshots of all the things that the kids were saying. And I'm so proud of him in so many ways. He never lowered himself to his abusers. He asked them to swipe up and identify themselves so that they could talk things out in person, but no one ever did. And just think about that, like a 16-year-old who's being completely bullied online, and he's trying to reclaim humanity and have a face-to-face conversation with some of these kids. And, unfortunately, he never got it. Now, this particular app, Yolo, not in the fine print, but in the big pop-up screen that came up when kids started using it, it said that they would monitor for cyberbullying and reveal the identities of those who do so and ban them from the app. And so you ask, well, why was he looking for hacks to find out who was doing this to him? Well, I quickly found out because I reached out to the company on 3 occasions, letting them know what happened to my son and asking them to follow their own state policies because I didn't want these kids to be doing this to others. And I was either ignored, or one time I got a canned response that said, "We're looking into your email. Thank you and have a great day," which just was a gut punch. And so we've realized later that there was only one employee at YOLO, and they had no ability to do what they said that they were going to do. So we ended up filing a class action lawsuit against Snapchat, YOLO, and the other one, LMK. And within a day, Snapchat filing the lawsuit, Snapchat removed the anonymous apps off their platform, and 6 months later, they settled with policy changes stating that they would never do that again and put anonymous apps on their back end, which made me very happy. But it's so sad it took losing my son and a lawsuit to make that happen when these companies know that anonymous apps for kids are really dangerous.
Can you tell us what you learned about the anonymous apps that the teens are using and how teen social media actually works? I think a lot of parents don't understand the actual logistics of it. And can you tell us also about which apps specifically worry you? You named 3, but I assume there might be others.
Right. So Snapchat and LMK are off Snapchat now. And so what I've learned is that this is the business model of both social media companies and anonymous apps. The apps are free because the user is the product. The longer you use these products, the more they collect data on you. They use that data to sell to advertisers, and that is their business model. And so social media, sending algorithmic information that kids are not looking up, like pro eating disorder information or pro suicide information, is shocking, and it keeps kids on their platform longer. Similarly, anonymous apps create online drama, and so that keeps kids online because they're looking at the drama and they want to make sure that their name doesn't get brought up and that they're being bullied. And so that's what I've learned. And as long as this is the model for social media companies, there is not one that I'm not worried about. We just recently saw the discovery that came out of the LA lawsuit against Meta and YouTube. TikTok and Snapchat settled out of that case, but there'll be more coming. We know that these CEOs know what they're doing. These are products that are supposed to be intentionally addictive. And even though their own employees are bringing up that they're concerned about the harm it's causing teens, they still don't make those changes because it is truly a model of profit over people, and those people are our kids.
It's almost like they're in a reality show. That's their real lives. It's almost generating the kind of drama that one would want to generate
Right.
on a TV show, but they're living it every day and their parents aren't even aware of it. It's
Right.
terrifying.
Yeah.
So, amid all of the unbelievable grief, how did you realize that you could take action and play a role in protecting other children?
Well, when I didn't get a response from YOLO on 3 different occasions, and I had to accept that this was not going to happen, I had a choice to make. I could be quiet and suffer in silence, or I could rip the Band-Aid off and go public with Carson's story, which is what I did. And I have not regretted it because I do feel like we've created a lot of awareness around the dangers of anonymous apps through our lawsuit, through all the speaking opportunities that I've had. And in the process, when this happened, I felt so alone. People weren't talking about online harms. It was nearly 6 years ago, like they are now. And in addition to creating awareness, I also now have a large group, sadly, large group of other parent survivors that have lost their children to other online harms. We call our group Parents Rise. And sextortion, um, drugs sold over Snapchat, laced with fentanyl, and more cyberbullying cases, choking challenges, you name it. We're a growing group. And in fact, we have a memorial in DC on June 23rd, the day my son died, and the day another mom, Amy Neville, lost her son from two different harms on Snapchat. And last year we had 250 signs on Capitol Hill of all the kids who have died. And it just continues to grow, especially with the AI chatbots. Now we're losing kids to those interactions as well.
You were in the chamber in Congress the day that Mark Zuckerberg testified. It's kind of an iconic moment that many people saw on the news or in follow-up videos. And you stood there with a picture of Carson when Mark Zuckerberg stood up and turned around to face parents. What was that like for you standing there in the face of money, technology, political power, the media? Can you take us to that moment?
It was really surreal because this was really the first congressional hearing where we had the CEOs, but we also had the parents in the audience, and we were allowed to hold up pictures of our kids. Mark Zuckerberg was asked by Senator Hawley to turn around and apologize to us. So this was not something that he wanted to do. It was something he was forced to do. It was really hard to see the executives, Evan Spiegel there, the CEO of Snapchat, because we know that they made decisions that benefited them profit wise, but ended up harming so many kids. I mean, and harming, there are many kids that are harmed that are still alive from these product designs. So, yeah, it was memorable, but Mark Zuckerberg's apology was not that sincere. It was forced. And you would think also that this would have been a pivotal moment for all of them when they were asked if they would support the Kids Online Safety Act that would require them to have a duty of care. They all did not answer yes. I think X was the only one. So it really showed us where their hearts were. And, instead of using this as a pivotal moment to change their products, yeah, they may lose a couple billions of dollars, but they have so much to begin with. And these are our kids' lives. But we know that that didn't happen. And they just continued doing what they always do.
That's terrible. Must have been very hard to hear a hollow apology. I'm sorry you had to experience that. Turning to the documentary for a second, in the documentary, there's some mention of Section 230. Can you explain what that is and what it means?
Sure. Section 230 is a 30-year-old law. And it was created when the internet was first starting, and there were bulletin boards where people could post things. And what Congress didn't want to happen is to have the growth of the internet to be slowed down by lawsuits of people suing for what people said online because of free speech and our First Amendment, which makes total sense. But we know now we are way past internet bulletin boards. These are intentional products designed to addict and keep everyone online longer. And the companies, unfortunately, are continuing to use this legislation as an immunity shield for lawsuits for product designs. And that's why we really need to reform Section 230 so that they can be held accountable for their products like every other industry in America has to have happen.
And you took action against Section 230 in your lawsuit, and there was another lawsuit that settled last week. Can you tell us where things stand with the challenges and the legal challenges?
It's mostly the times. We were able in our lawsuit against Yolo to appeal to a higher court, the Ninth Circuit Court of California, and ruling of the lower court was overturned. So we did win our appeal for Section 230 for product misrepresentation, but not product liability. It was 50% win. But now we're back in the California District Court, and the company Yolo has fought us for using Section 230 for 5 years now, and now they are bankrupt and they have no attorneys to represent them. So unfortunately, because of Section 230, I will never get my day in court and be able to face Gregoire Henrion, the sole employee and founder of Yolo. So the recent lawsuits against Meta and YouTube in LA, they actually, were fighting to get the Section 230 immunity shield. Unfortunately, the judge said there were so many kids harmed that she was able to let it go through. And we're just hoping there are so many more lawsuits lined up after this one, and that this really opens the gate so that we can at least get to discovery. I think everybody should have the right to get to discovery. Reforming Section 230 doesn't mean that we would win all our lawsuits, but we get to go through the process of justice like you can in every other industry. And we've learned so much from the discovery of these recent trials with the internal documents that had to be released, and shows that these companies are intentionally designing their products to be addictive.
And one of along with Section 230, you've become a fierce and tireless advocate for stronger internet related protections for kids. And you've met with a lot of elected leaders in your advocacy work, as we understand it, for the Kids Online Safety and Privacy Act. You got so close to seeing that legislation passed in 2024. Can you tell us about what happened and where it stands now?
Yes, it was over 2 years of my life just dedicated to the Kids Online Safety Act. And we ended up getting over 70 co-sponsors, bipartisan. This was not a partisan issue at all. We were asking for simply a duty of care, like other industries have when they create their products. And kids still could look up whatever they wanted. But what we objected to is the algorithms feeding them information that they were not looking up. Like, we have kids who've lost their life. They were looking up positive affirmations online, but instead they get fed suicide content. Or girls that are looking up a fitness regime because they're playing soccer, and they get fed how to survive on 500 calories a day. That's what we object to. Now, if they wanted to look it up on their own, that's fair game, but we don't think it's fair that these companies are feeding this information to them and sending them down these dark rabbit holes. So it did pass in the Senate in the Kids Online Safety Act and Privacy Act. It was COSPA. And in July 2024, 91-3. And it was, such a wonderful day. And it was all set to pass in the House. It had full support, but Speaker Johnson refused to meet with the parents. He still has not met with parents to this day, and he would not bring it to the floor for a vote. So it died. And now the House has presented what they call the Kids Act, and it is a completely watered down COSA. No duty of care. The duty of care is actually the companies creating their own safety policies and monitoring them themselves, which is worthless, basically. And then more concerning is preemption. The wake of nothing happening at the federal level, the good thing that we have seen is that states are stepping up and they're passing their own legislation to keep kids safer online. And if we have preemption, that means that states can't do that. And so this is now a bill that we fought so hard for. Now parent survivors are fighting against it.
The documentary, and I don't think we've mentioned the name of it yet, it's called Your Attention Please. There are two real champions along with you in the documentary. The first is Frances Haugen, the Facebook whistleblower, I think she's pretty well known. She's done incredible work. And the other is the founder of Rethink. Her name is Trisha Prabhu. And they are just so, like you, they are really dedicated to this work. They've given up a lot of their own paths in life to take this path. In your case, I was so impressed to see that Vivek Murthy, the U.S. Surgeon General, called you out by name in a presentation and said that you had had such an impact on him. And boy, he's done a lot to move this cause forward. To have the Surgeon General put out a warning about social media, that was really notable. So where do you see all of this going, given the current regulatory environment in the United States? Is this going to be big tobacco, but we have to wait until a new administration comes in? Or how do you forecast things playing out?
Well, they say that it took 20 years to change people's habits with tobacco. And we're at really, when you look at the invent of the smartphone, we're at like the 12, 15-year mark. So I do see so many correlations. Tobacco had litigation and internal documents were revealed showing that they knew their products were harmful, the warning labels, and then everybody doing their part to change culturally. I mean, can you imagine? Decades ago, people were smoking everywhere and you don't see it anymore. And I do have hope that this is happening with social media. I think that we're seeing so many states do phone-free schools, and that is such a big start. This is all kind of part of the movement. In the movie, we have the log off movement. Millennials are meeting up, they're locking their phones away, and they're connecting in person. Just like at schools, kids are at lunch actually able to have conversations with each other. I just heard this morning about bars that are phone free spaces and restaurants. And so I think we all need to our part. Clearly, we can't wait for legislation, and litigation is slow, but education is happening. And I also think that there's such an opportunity for parents to delay the giving their children a phone, or really, monitoring it and limiting the time that they're on it. So all this is part of a movement, and I am really hopeful that we will see change. I think even kids are realizing this does not feel good.
Wanted to bring up a couple of quotes that stand out to us from the documentary. The first is the Facebook ethos that's pretty well known, move fast and break things. And the other is a quote on Carson's bench under the apple tree, in the end, only kindness matters. Those are such diametrically opposed ideas, and you're incredibly strong to stand up every day in favor of Carson's side. Can you tell us what's next?
Well, the documentary was really well received at South by Southwest. That's where we had the world premiere, and it's been getting into additional film fests. If people want to follow where they are and more news on distribution, you can go to Your Attention Please, and please is plz.com. And so that's really exciting, just getting the word out. And everywhere we go for festivals, we have a Q&A, so meeting parents, and parents come up to me and they thank me for the work I'm doing to keep their kids safe. But I also kind of put it back on them, is that we can all do our part, whether it's, being a voice for phone-free schools in your area, or writing your legislators and letting them know that we care about social media, and we want legislation, and we want our kids to be safe, because they need to start listening to their constituents and not big tech that have just unlimited funding. And you can see it's probably pretty enticing, but we need to make this an election issue. As far as what I'm working on, you can follow me. I don't use social media except for LinkedIn, but I have my own website with all my recent work, and that's www.cjbeffect.org. The effect is because Carson had always talked about, when he got older, that he wanted to make this world a better place. And I truly believe he is having an effect. And we're doing this together. Recently, I've been testifying for AI chatbot legislation, which passed in the state of Oregon and Washington. Legislators at the state level are learning their lessons. We waited too long on social media, but the concerns of no guardrails for AI chatbots marketed to teens. We're already starting to lose kids to suicides because of that. So legislation is being passed there, and I've been active there.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt that Carson's having an effect. You are absolutely making sure that happens. Sin, before we close, I'm sure parents listening to this podcast are a little bit overwhelmed by what they're hearing. What conversations do you think people should be having with their children, and what action should they take in their houses today?
So I'll start with those that have already given their kid a phone, because it's then at that point, really difficult to take it back. But I would have rules around it. No phones in the bedroom at night for sure. Everybody should have their phones out into the kitchen. I mean, if you need a lockbox to do that. And then hopefully they're in phone-free schools so they can start getting engaged in person with friendships and activities. But always talk to your kids about this. Talk to them just in a casual way about what are you seeing online? What's funny? What was the worst thing you saw? Not in a interrogation way, but keep those communications open and know that, in Carson's case, there were bullying incidents at school, and he told us about it. But in the case of cyberbullying, kids really are reluctant to tell somebody because they're so addicted to their phones. They don't want their phone taken away, and they don't want to be seen as a snitch. So anyway, there's, just keeping the communication open. Now, if you haven't given your kid tween a phone, please delay. I think the best thing if you're a young parent is start getting involved in a community with other parents that do want to wait. There's an organization called Wait Until 8 that can help formalize that for you, where parents, even at kindergarten level, sign a contract saying we're all in this together. We don't think these products are safe for our kids, and we're going to delay. So that's one thing that you can do. And, really, no one that I've ever spoken to has said to me, I wish I gave my kid a cell phone earlier and social media. It's just the exact opposite. So if we can start changing the norms, I think it's going to be a lot easier for the next generation of parents. And I hope that they all can learn. Our kids were lab rats. We didn't know, but now we know. And it just clearly isn't safe for kids to be on social media.
Kristin, thank you for fighting this fight, and we'll join you in this.
Thank you so much for having me.
And Kristin, your work is shining such a critical light on these challenges and pushing all of us, the parents, educators, technology companies, Congress, our legislators, to think more carefully about how we protect young people. And if this episode encourages even one parent to start that conversation, we will have succeeded in making a difference. To our listeners, thank you for joining us to get your recommended dose of civics and civilizations this week.
And we'll see you next time on Vitamin OC.